What does it take to attract mature bucks to the same piece of ground, year after year, for 45 consecutive seasons without going home empty once? I started hunting with my father in 1979 when I was 8 years old. He put me on a bucket behind a cedar tree in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia with a single-shot .410 and told me not to move until he came back. A doe walked out 40 minutes later at 30 yards, roughly the distance across a 2-car garage and driveway, and I missed so badly that the slug hit a tree 10 feet above her head. She looked up at the tree, looked at me, and walked away like nothing happened. My father laughed about that for 20 years. He brought it up every Thanksgiving. I still hear him telling it. I did not go home empty that year because my father killed a buck that evening from the same tree I was sitting under. He dragged it through the snow with one hand and held my hand with the other. I have been chasing that feeling ever since. He never bought a bag of commercial deer attractant in his life. He never owned a trail camera. He never tested his soil. What he did was study the land he hunted until he knew where the deer wanted to be in every season, under every condition, in every weather pattern. And then he sat there, quietly, and he waited. That is the core of everything I am about to tell you, refined over 45 years of my own mistakes and successes into a system that works on any property if you commit to it. But every year since, I have filled a tag. 45 consecutive seasons. Bow, rifle, muzzleloader, 6 states. And the reason is not because I am a better shot or a better woodsman than anyone watching this. It is because I figured out, slowly and through a lot of failure, that attracting deer is not about what you put on the ground. It is about what you do to the ground itself. Every hunter I know who struggles to see deer is focused on the wrong question. They ask, what can I buy to bring deer in? The right question is, what can I do to this property so deer do not want to leave? Those are completely different problems with completely different solutions. And the second one is cheaper, lasts longer, and works whether you hunt it or not. I am going to walk you through the 5 things I do on every property I hunt that together create a system where deer show up because the property gives them everything they need, and stay until the end because there is one thing on this list that costs $0, takes 30 minutes once a year, and accounts for more of my mature buck encounters than food plots, mineral sites, and scent products combined. The first thing, and the one that takes the longest to pay off, is cover, not food. Cover. Every hunter I talk to wants to plant food plots immediately. That is layer 3 of a 5-layer system. The foundation is cover, because a deer that does not feel safe on your property will not stay on your property no matter how good the food is. A whitetail needs thick bedding cover within 200 yards of a food source, roughly the length of 2 football fields, to feel secure enough to use that food source during daylight. If your property has a great food plot, but the nearest thick cover is 400 yards away on the neighbor's land, the deer are bedding on his property, eating on yours after dark, and giving him all the daylight encounters. You fed the deer. He gets the shot. I watched this happen for 3 years on a lease in northwest Arkansas before I understood the problem. The food plot was producing 30 to 40 nighttime camera photos per week on a Tacticam cellular camera, 0 daylight photos of mature bucks. The plot was in a wide open bottom 300 yards from the nearest tree line. The deer loved the food. They refused to visit it in daylight because there was no cover close enough to make them feel safe. The fix was not a better food plot. It was planting a 3-row strip of Egyptian wheat, which is a tall, thick annual grass that grows 8 to 12 feet high in one summer, along the south edge of the plot, between the food and the open field. That wall of tall grass gave deer a visual screen from one side and made the plot feel like it was tucked into an edge instead of sitting in the middle of an open field. The Egyptian wheat costs about $15 for a 10-pound bag, covers a 1/4 acre in a single row, and grows to full height in 60 to 70 days from planting. You plant it in late May or early June, and by August it is taller than your truck, 1 row, $15, and it turned a nighttime-only food plot into a daylight hunting plot. Daylight buck photos went from 0 to roughly 6 to 8 per week within the first month of the wheat reaching full height. Same plot, same food, different cover structure, same principle behind the 15 locations video. The cover is what makes deer feel safe enough to use the food during the hours that matter to you. Before you plant your first food plot, walk your property and ask yourself where the thickest cover is. If the answer is nowhere, start there. Plant a quarter-acre patch of switchgrass or native warm season grasses in the spot closest to where you want deer to bed. It takes one season to establish, and it provides permanent bedding cover for the next 10 to 15 years, with nothing more than a burn or a mowing every 3 years to keep it thick. That quarter-acre patch, roughly the size of a large backyard, will hold more deer on your property than any food plot you ever plant, because it solves the problem that makes deer leave, which is not hunger, it is fear. I spent 3 seasons buying better seed, better fertilizer, better scent products, all while the actual problem was that the closest thick cover to my food plot was a 5-minute walk for a deer. The deer knew the food was there. They ate it every night. They just refused to show up while the sun was still up, because the terrain around the plot made them feel exposed. The cover fix took 1 spring to plant and 1 summer to grow. It solved a problem I had been throwing money at for 3 years. The second thing is water, and almost nobody thinks about it. A deer drinks 2 to 4 quarts of water per day, roughly a half gallon to a full gallon, and during September and early October, in the southern half of Whitetail Range, natural water sources dry up. Creeks go low, puddles evaporate, farm ponds drop 3 feet, and deer shift their daily patterns to revolve around whatever reliable water source remains. If that water source is on your property, you just became the center of every deer's daily circuit without spending $1 on seed or fertilizer. I dug a small pond on a property in Hill Country, Texas 7 years ago, about 15 feet across and 4 feet deep, roughly the size of a large hot tub, fed by roof runoff from a small equipment shed. The total cost was a weekend of shovel work and a $40 pond liner. That pond has produced more Tacticam trail camera photos of mature bucks in September and early October than any food plot on the property, because it is the only reliable water within a quarter mile during the dry months. In a wet year, the pond matters less because water is everywhere. In a drought year, it becomes the single most visited location on the entire property. I had a September in Hill Country where the creek went dry for 6 weeks and the pond had deer tracks from every direction, like spokes on a wheel. 14 different bucks on camera in 1 month, all coming for water that nobody else on the road had. Water does not replace food, but it multiplies the effectiveness of everything else you do because it adds 1 more reason for deer to stay on your property instead of traveling to the neighbors. If you already have a natural water source on your property, make sure it stays accessible during dry periods. A spring that silts over or a creek that chokes with debris in late summer is a water source that disappears exactly when deer need it most. Clearing a spring head takes 20 minutes and guarantees water through the driest month on your calendar. Everything in this video, plus 60 more field-tested techniques, is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages of deer behavior science, scent control, scouting methods, stand placement, and rut phase tactics with a quick reference card you can take to the stand. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. The third thing is food, and I am not going to repeat everything from the food plot system video because we covered it there in detail. The short version is this. Test your soil, correct the pH with lime, plant perennials like white clover for spring and summer nutrition, and plant annuals like brassicas for fall and winter attraction after the first hard frost converts the starches to sugars. Make your plots long and narrow against timber edges, not wide open squares in the middle of fields. And buy your seed from an ag store, not a sporting goods store. The seed with a picture of a buck on the bag is typically 2 years old and half ryegrass by volume. The seed from the co-op is fresh, species-specific, and half the price. My wallet has strong opinions about which one I am buying. A 50-pound bag of white clover seed from a farm supply runs about $180 and covers 2 to 3 acres. A 5-pound bag of brand-name clover blend from the hunting store covers a quarter acre and costs $35. Do the math per acre, and the hunting store brand is roughly 4 times the price for inferior seed. The deer do not read the bag. One detail I did not cover in that video that I want to add here. The most underrated food plot strategy I have ever used is strategic mowing. Deer are attracted to fresh growth the same way you are attracted to a fresh salad instead of wilted lettuce. The sides of highways are covered with deer, feeding at dawn and dusk, not because the soil is special, but because the road crews mow those shoulders regularly. and the fresh regrowth is tender, green, and loaded with nutrients compared to the mature plants in the surrounding field. If you have an established clover plot that has gotten tall and stemmy by midsummer, mow it. Drop the deck to about 4 inches, roughly the height of your boot sole. Within 10 days, the plot will flush with new tender growth that is dramatically more palatable to deer than the mature growth you just cut. I mow my perennial plots twice per season, once in late June and once in early August, and both times I see a spike in camera activity within 7 to 10 days. A buddy who manages food plots for an outfitting operation in western South Dakota mows his clover plots every 6 weeks all summer, and says his deer usage is roughly triple what it is when he lets the plots grow unmanaged. I have not been that aggressive with mowing, but his results make me think I should be. The mowing costs nothing if you already have a tractor or a bush hog. It takes an hour for a half-acre plot, and it resets the palatability clock on a plot that was starting to lose its appeal. If your perennial plot is not getting the deer traffic you expected, mow it before you blame the seed or the soil. Fresh growth is the cheapest deer attractant on the planet, and you already own the equipment to produce it. I mowed a clover plot on a property in northwest Arkansas at 3 p.m. on a Saturday in late July, and by Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m., a hawk stand 30 yards from the plot, Edge had a doe and twin fawns feeding in the fresh growth. They had not visited that plot on camera in 2 weeks before the mow. The mowing reset the palatability, and the deer responded within 4 days. 4 days. From zero activity to a family group feeding in daylight. The fourth thing is pressure management, and this is the one most hunters refuse to do, because it requires hunting less. Every time you walk to your stand, you deposit scent. Every time you check a camera, you deposit scent. Every time you drive your ATV down a trail, you deposit scent and sound. A mature buck that encounters human scent on a property 3 times in a week will shift his core activity area within days. Research from the University of Georgia on GPS-collared bucks showed that repeated human intrusion in a buck's core area caused a measurable shift in daytime movement patterns within 3 to 5 days. The buck did not leave the property. He adjusted his schedule and his route to avoid the intrusion zone. The practical application is this. You need sanctuary zones, which are areas of your property that you never enter during hunting season. 0 boots on the ground, 0 camera checks, 0 scouting. The deer figure out within 1 season which parts of your property are safe and which parts produce human encounters, and they bed in the safe parts. If you designate 30% of your property as sanctuary and never violate that boundary, you will hold more mature deer on your property than someone who hunts every acre twice a week. I did not believe this until I stopped hunting the back 40 acres of a 120-acre lease in New Hampshire. The first year I stayed out of those 40 acres, my hawk stand on the edge of the sanctuary produced 4 mature buck sightings in 6 sites. The 3 years before that, the same general area produced 1 mature buck sighting total. I was the reason the deer were not there. My boots were the problem. I was checking cameras every weekend, walking the same trails, sitting the same stands 3 or 4 days a week during the rut. I thought I was being dedicated. I was being counterproductive. The deer taught me that lesson by refusing to show up until I stopped showing up first. Hunting less produced more encounters than hunting more. That was a hard pill to swallow for a guy who would rather be in a tree than anywhere else on Earth, but the data did not care about my feelings. Same principle from the Whitetail Facts video. Your boots deposit scent with every step through the interdigital gland, which is a scent gland between the hooves of deer that leaves a chemical signature with every step, except your version is human skin cells and boot rubber, and the deer read it for exactly what it is. Threat. Look, everything I am walking through here is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages, scent control, scouting, stand placement, rut tactics, plus a quick reference card for the stand. Link in the description, QR code on screen. The 5th thing is the one I promised at the beginning. It costs nothing. It takes 30 minutes, and it accounts for more of my mature buck encounters than anything else on this list. It is building 1 mock scrape per year in 1 specific location. A mock scrape is a patch of cleared dirt about 2 feet across, roughly the size of a dinner plate, that you create to imitate the scrape's bucks, make naturally to communicate with other deer. Above the scrape, you need a licking branch, which is an overhanging branch about 4 to 5 feet off the ground, roughly chest height on a whitetail. That deer will rub with their forehead and preorbital glands to deposit scent. You make the scrape by clearing the leaves and duff down to bare dirt under a low-hanging branch on a trail between bedding and food. Then, you apply a few drops of commercial scrape scent like Code Blue or Tinks to the licking branch. Not the ground, the branch. Because the forehead and preorbital glands are the primary communication glands deer use at scrapes, and the licking branch is where the conversation happens. The dirt is just where they paw. I have been building one mock scrape per year on every property I hunt for the last 19 years. Same location, same licking branch, same 2 feet of cleared dirt. And every year, that single scrape becomes a community scrape that every buck in the area visits. Check your state regulations before using any scent product at a scrape site. Some states classify commercial scent as bait, and urine-based scents have been restricted in several states due to CWD concerns. A 5-minute check on your state wildlife agency website saves you a fine and protects the herd. If scent products are restricted in your area, skip the commercial scent entirely. The scrape itself, just bare dirt and a natural licking branch, will still attract deer because the location and the branch are the primary attractants. Bucks that find a fresh scrape in a transition zone will adopt it and start depositing their own scent within days, regardless of whether you added anything to it. The commercial scent just accelerates the initial discovery. The location does the long-term work. The key to the mock scrape is location. It goes on the downwind side of the trail between the bedding area and the food source, 50 to 80 yards from the food, roughly half a football field, not on the plot edge, not in the bedding area. In the transition zone, where deer shift from cautious travel mode to relaxed feeding mode. That transition zone is where mature bucks slow down, check their surroundings, and interact with scrapes before committing to the open food source. I ran a bear archery cruiser through a 4.5-year-old 10-point at a mock scrape on a property in the Shenandoah Valley at 22 yards. He was working the licking branch with his forehead at 5:10 p.m. in late October, completely focused on the branch, head tilted up, front legs planted. He stood there for nearly 20 seconds. I could hear him breathing. My scent blocker suit was soaked with sweat from the climb in, but the wind was steady from the northwest, and my scent was carrying away from his approach line into an empty hollow behind me. I drew, settled my pin, and released at a deer that had no idea I existed. That scrape had been in the same spot for 6 years. He visited it every October. My buddy who hunted the property with me wanted to build 4 or 5 scrapes across the farm to cover more ground. I told him 1 scrape in the right spot beats 5 scrapes in random spots, because the concentration of scent and sign in that one location is what makes it a destination rather than a casual stop. He thought I was being stubborn. I shot a 150 class deer out of that single scrape, and he spent the rest of November sitting over 4 empty ones. I only hunted it once, on the right wind, on the right date, and it produced the best buck of my life. The reason I only build 1 scrape per property is because multiple mock scrapes dilute the scent concentration and create competing attraction points that spread deer movement across multiple locations. 1 scrape in the right spot concentrates every buck's movement through 1 predictable 20-yard window. 1 location, 1 sit, 1 shot. That patience is the part nobody wants to hear about. The system works, but the discipline to only hunt the right spots on the right, wins on the right dates, is what separates a good year from a great one. I have hunted 45 seasons without going home empty, but I have also sat through more quiet mornings than exciting ones. The system puts deer on the property. The patience puts you in the right place when the deer makes his 1 mistake. My father taught me to hunt from a bucket behind a cedar tree. He did not have food plots. He did not have trail cameras. He did not have $40 bottles of scent or GPS-enabled cellular cameras. He had patience, and he had knowledge of the land. The deer came to him because he understood where they wanted to be, not because he invented a reason for them to show up. Everything I just described, the cover, the water, the food, the pressure management, the mock scrape, is built on that same principle. You are not tricking deer into coming to your property. You are making your property into the place they would choose to live if they could pick any piece of ground in the county. Do that, and you will never go home empty. I have not in 45 years, and the deer are still coming. The system is not complicated. The patience is.